Alternative cave, alternative shadows. From the blue-pilled dream world of Normieville to the nightmarish fringe of the darkest conspiracies, we are all living in an augmented reality. The normie dream is tranquil compared to the nightmare the red-pilled awaken to. Red and blue pills might as well come from the same pharmaceutical factory. The whole idea of taking a pill seems very pharmaceutical-coded. It's almost as though we live in a vast mental asylum and the more unruly minds are prescribed harsher propaganda. The Q movement didn't wake from the blue pill trance into reality. It simply adopted an alternative worldview. But alternative doesn't necessarily mean truthful. Even when alternative voices are sincere, their honesty ends if they continue to build on the mainstream's foundation of lies. Take 9/11 truthers, for example. They debated how the attacks were done and who did them, but rarely questioned whether the attacks happened at all. The idea that such an event could be entirely staged was outside the frame of reference for both mainstream and alternative media at the time. Mass media never includes true non-believers in its narratives. It may mock or attack alternative explanations, but only if they still accept the core claim. You can say reptilian space aliens did 9/11 and get laughed at in mainstream interviews and branded a conspiracy kook, but say it was a decades-in-the-making psychological operation, and you'll be excluded from the discussion entirely. Why? Because it comes down to a worldview monopoly. This monolithic psychological containment system for all humanity is a closed system, and nothing outside of its paradigm is acknowledged. In Westworld, the characters trapped in the simulation say, "It doesn't look like anything to me," when confronted with information that triggers their cognitive dissonance. This prevents them from processing reality outside their programmed loop. Captive and passive audience in a closed system. The media manages a status quo, and its defense mechanisms include pre-packaged conspiracy narratives that guardrail the mainstream narratives. It is important to understand what media is and how centralized its storytelling is. Publicity stunts, perception management, psychological operations, and worldview warfare being waged under the guise of news and entertainment leaves us at the mercy of trusted pundits. By necessity, most working people must outsource to some degree their news aggregation. The overload makes it impossible to reject every claim not substantiated by evidence. This shifts us from active to passive news consumers. Auto-hoaxing is active. Auto-believing is passive. Most people passively accept the news they didn't watch as true. After all, if it was fake, someone would have told them, or so they ignorantly assume. The ideal citizen lacks the ability to deliberately reject ideas and is a passive recipient of programming and instructions. The power elite is engineering a new human, totally augmented with a digital world that has been utterly censored and merged with the state's approved operating system. Healthy agnosticism is certainly warranted in today's immersive illusion. You must step outside of the consensus frame of reference to see the consensus as such. If you don't consider the possibility that you're wrong, you may never know. Hubris and ego keep many locked in their point of view. Contradictions always result in cognitive dissonance, upset expectations, and painful emotions. When reality and beliefs clash, there is dissonance and disharmony. The pain of being wrong becomes an incentive to avoid confronting contradictions. We see this at the individual level and at the level of political parties and religions. The auto-believers are akin to religious fundamentalists. Just as religious fundamentalism becomes volatile and dangerous, so too does the unthinking and blind acceptance of government propaganda make the true believers dangerous and extreme. They are dangerous simply by their influence. Auto-believers largely outnumber auto-hoaxers. The dominant paradigm, the consensus agreement, exists in the minds of the believers. The perspective of the non-believers is not included within the closed informational system of the world stage. The meta-conspiracy. All the separate state-approved conspiracy theories, red pills, trutherism, QAnon, are not only fake, but are all part of a larger, unified psychological war. This is the real conspiracy. The meta-script is the story within which all the other stories take place, the place where entertainment fiction and pseudo-news fiction merge. This would include the eschatological script inherent in the climate change narrative, a secular doomsday flood myth. Those who believe we're following a path to civilizational destruction in 10 years because of our eco-sins are following a meta-script, a propaganda narrative told across many platforms, fictional and non-fictional over time. Every holy book contains a meta-script. Religions are competing worldviews, fighting over the interpretation of reality. Media, not traditional religion, is now the opiate of the masses. The mainstream mediated worldview is tantamount to a new Bible. One way to conceptualize this is Old Testament, New Testament, and today we have a News Testament. Media as a world-state church has supplanted religion in its worldview-shaping influence. It's no different than a holy book in the authority it exerts over the mind of its believers. By default, all news remains within the established parameters of the world stage, the model within which all of the fictional augmentations to our worldview are performed. Like a religion, mass media supplies us with our contemporary myths. Against the backdrop of real news, real culture, and real happenings, there is the metascript, a pre-scripted history that day-to-day happenings are conformed to. The entertainment media consistently foreshadows and prepares the public for future psyops. Additionally, it supplies real-time, concurrent psyop reinforcement content. This is beyond mere predictive programming and reveals a synchronization between parallel propaganda streams, not as anomalous, but as systemic. Planted hints demonstrate that the psychological operations are written into the metascript. This explains the seemingly eerie foreshadowing often described as predictive. Entertainment and news reporting follow the same metascript on parallel propaganda streams. Both news and entertainment media serve a singular purpose, maintaining the status quo within the world stage, our de facto one-world religion. The Psywar is a permanent fixture, the primary instrument of government itself. The war is not meant to be won, it is meant to be continuous. On Perpetual War from George Orwell's 1984. If you find this subject interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear the rest of the series, the IPSD program, a skeptic's guide to the theater of Psywar and IPS production.